you remember now those childhood days gone by? You woke up with the morning sun. It was warm and alive and fun. I'm a roll, don't turn around, I'm a roll.
Hello friends, fans and enemies, welcome to a Zane-Destiny video. Well, there's been a recent update regarding the Digifest that's coming up. They're introducing some interesting gameplay mechanics in response to the surveys that we done some time ago. So if you'd like to join me in reading this document, okay, let's get around to reading these rules, shall we? They're available on the events page on world.digimoncard.com underneath modified rules. So, modified gameplay rules will be tested for the main event as follows. For store events, please confirm with the store that the following rules will be used. So, from my understanding is these aren't going to be replacing the current format or current standard. They're just testing the waters at Digifest, which, by the way, if you haven't got your ticket for Digifest yet, please do so as soon as possible, though I'm pretty sure at this point it probably sold out. Going to the London one though. Whew. Yeah, so I'm hoping that there's going to be like a standard format and alternative formats, though this is all in response to the surveys that we submitted some time ago about alternatives. Though me personally, I was kind of hoping like doubles will be coming on for us, but who knows, maybe later down the line. Anyways, let's start, shall we? Mulligans. After players have placed their security and drawn their starting hand, they may review their hand and mulligan. To mulligan, place all cards in the hand to the bottom of your deck. Do not shuffle and do not replace your security cards. Draw 5 new cards from the top of your deck. Further mulligans are not permitted. So I can understand that there are turns where you start off and you've gone to a level 5 and raising and managed to choke your opponent in one memory. Happy days, glory. And there'll be other times where you hard play a Magna Angemon for 7 and you recover 1, but then they go into blips on him and destroy your security and they've got game. We've all been there. My view on it, I'm kind of leaning against mulliganing. So, mulliganing, whatever. So, it's always cool and a nice feeling if you're able to pull off that huge combo that you want. But I also feel that whatever you draw, you should be able to do something with that. If you're continuously relying on mulliganing for every game, then you've got a deck building problem, and that needs to be rectified. But that also goes kind of in line with like shenanigans that I'll start explaining a little later after we talk about side decking. But the thing I am happy about is, I understand in Pokemon, if you don't have a basic Pokemon, you have to reveal your hand to your opponent to show you don't have one. At least in this one, if they put in you have to reveal level 3 and you don't have a level 3, those 5 cards, it may only be 5 cards, you're revealing a lot of information to your opponent. There are certain decks that have certain play styles and play certain cards. If you have to show your hand, that's a lot of information to give to your opponent, unfortunately, and that's something I'm glad they haven't said that you need to do. But me personally, I kind of don't want mulligans. Side decking. A lot of people have been asking for side decks, and I'm probably a bit more keen on this, but not in its current format. But anyways, side decks. Players will be permitted to bring their main deck of 50 cards and a side deck of up to 10 cards. Okay. Side decks may include main deck and Digi-Egg cards. Main deck being options, tamers, Digimon, etc. The limit on copies of cards of the same card number that can be included applies to the total cards in your deck and side deck. If rules or effects change the limit of copies of cards that can be included, the limit applies to the total cards in your deck and side deck. That is just a wordy way of saying it's a future proofing, basically. So if I were to give an example, you can have up to 4 copies of like a card. So say for example, Star Deck Tie. Focus. Normally you can have 4 copies of them in a deck. If you would be side decking, you could have 3 copies in the main deck and 1 in the side deck, or 2 and 2, for example. Cards like Eospawn actually have the effect of saying you can have up to 50 cards of this card in a deck. So the reason why they've worded like that is, like I said, for future proofing. You could have 40 cards of Eospawn in the main deck and 10 in your side deck, or it's to stop people from doing like 50 cards in main deck and 60. You get where I'm going with this. Of course, you have to be an absolute madman if you're running like a 50 card Yammering deck. I would love to try that actually. Sounds fun. So, the contents of the side deck are considered a secret area and should not be shown to the opponent. Both players should count out their side deck in view of their opponent to confirm how many cards are there in the start of each match. Your side deck may be returned to the deck box for safekeeping, which must be kept on the table in view of both players. I may have a slight issue with this one, personally, but I'll probably get more into that a little later. After the end of each game in a match, players may choose to swap cards into the deck from their side deck. The same number of cards must be swapped between each. The quantity of both decks must remain the same before and after siding. Makes absolute sense. So it's kind of the same with Yu-Gi-Oh, to tell the truth. So if you got 10 side deck cards and 50 main deck cards, at the end of swapping, those values, those numbers must be the same on both. And apologies if you can hear my grumbling stomach. I guess it's time for food. Please keep the time. Please keep the time between games to under 3 minutes. All preparations for the next game and exchanging the cards between main deck and side deck must be carried out within the 3 minutes. I've already got an issue with that one. I'll talk about that a little later. Players may be penalised if a judge determines them to be wasting time. Yeah. Okay. Before the start of each game, if a player has a side deck, they should present it to their opponent face down. The number of cards in the side deck is public information, but a player is not required to reveal how many cards will swap between decks. That makes sense. So, say like you swap 3 cards from your main and side deck, you don't have to tell your opponent how many cards you're swapping. So yeah, that makes sense. But at the start of each game, you have to present to your opponent face down how many cards you got in your side deck, if you side decked, with each game, and then time wasting. You can probably see where I'm going with this. Players are not permitted to review their side deck contents during a game. Makes sense. No time wasting, no shenanigans. At the end of a match, players must return their decks and side deck to their original states. If a player receives a game loss penalty prior to the start of the first game, players are not allowed to switch cards out from their side decks before the start of game 2. So that to me says that as soon as you come across a new opponent, your deck must be its default state. What do I mean by default state? Well, the deck list you submitted, so your main deck and your side deck, and every time you go to play a new opponent, whether your first game was awarded a game loss or not, your deck must be default. So no side decking, even if you didn't play. Oh dear, my stomach's growling like crazy. So my issue with this, you're only allowed 3 minutes for side decking between games. If the current tournament format carries on, which is 15 minutes, the average game for me tends to last like 10 to 15 minutes if things are going steady. So if you have to go to best of 3, that's potentially 45 minutes. So 3 minutes of like side decking. If you're playing like security control or sort of like some sort of slow burning deck, that's going to be tough, especially if you want a side deck in between. Not only that, some people might be putting some shenanigans. Like, well, I'm going to use myself as an example. It's probably not a good example, but I played security control one time, and the first match took 35 minutes. The second match went to time. So I won the first match, and the second match had to be draw because it went to time. Imagine if I was side decking in between. And imagine if my opponent was salty enough to say he was slow playing during his siding. So I feel like, I mean, I understand that other card games and TCGs probably experienced it before. They probably have their own ways of working around it, and there probably is like easy solutions to this, but I feel like you're probably going to need a stopwatch next to your table. Like, you both declare we're side decking, You got 3 minutes. But not only that, each time you side deck and before the next round starts, like the next game starts, you have to lay your cards out to show that you've got the same number of cards in your side deck. Of course, it's eventually that's going to turn to, yeah, don't worry about it. You know, like some people don't care about cutting the deck or anything like that. People will just be like, yeah, I believe you. But there's going to be some people that are going to need you. Well, really, you should be, out of courtesy, laying out your cards face down to show that you've got the same number of side deck cards. You know, because it's common courtesy. So adding that on the time, I mean, that's all got to be done in 3 minutes. Not only that, I mean, you should have a rough idea what sort of cards you will be taking out depending what sort of matchup you've got. I won't be. I'll just be doing it on the fly like I normally do. But you should know that I'm playing against Machine Dramon. DP reduction is no good. Deletion effects probably not that great. I'm going to need some bouncing effects. So you would know I need to take these 4 cards out, but these 4 in. Done, dusted, great. But not everyone's not going to be like that. Some people are just going to be going on the fly, like I said. So I feel there could be a potential shenanigans here, especially if you introduce the mulligan. I mean, was there a limit on mulligan? There wasn't a limit on mulligan. So I know you can only do it once a game, but that's once a game. So you could look at your hand for about a minute, mulligan. Game 2, look at your hand for about a minute, mulligan. See what I'm saying about slow playing, things like that? So beginning of the match, you need to show, say you got a side deck, show number of cards, have the game. Game 2, you're say you're going to side deck, do the change within 3 minutes, and also within those 3 minutes, show that you've got the same number of cards. Do game 2, game 3 if it goes to that far. I think in the current format, side decking is probably a good thing, but I also feel in the current format they need to have some sort of allocation. Maybe extend it to 60 minutes instead of 50 minutes. I think that would be more than enough to tell the truth. But I think to start off with, if side decking became like a standardized thing, I don't think I'll be using it. I'll be sticking to decks that I've pre-made, and if I lose, I lose. So yeah, that's my take on it. Mulligans, I'm not overly keen on it. I think it kind of like kills the spirit of the game a little. I'm not sure. Side decking, I'm iffy about it, but they might need to change some of the other rules. So how about we sort of like switch things up a bit. So if I just demonstrate what they mean. So playmat. I use it for my Mastermon deck, but this isn't my Mastermon deck I've got here. So I've already shuffled these cards. Let's just cut them just for the sake of. Also note, some people seem to not fully understand how security should be played or placed. The top card should normally be at the bottom of the stack. So, and when you reveal it, you reveal from the top here. So the last card should always be the card that used to be at the top here. Doesn't really matter how you lay it out as long as you stick to that formula, but it'd be surprising how many people ask about that. So, drew 5. Let's see what kind of hand I've got. I think that's probably a perfect example of a dodgy hand. I mean, I do have level 3, so I could play those at least, but I don't really have enough to work with. So at this point, before you hatch the Digi Egg, security gets left alone. You wouldn't hatch at all because as soon as you hatch, you're saying you're happy with that hand. You'll put all 5 of these at the bottom of the deck. Jeez. And draw another 5. It's not much better. I mean, it's something. Yeah, it's a weird deck. I call it Star Brigades. Might do a deck profile. Who knows? Yeah, I mean, this particular deck, it doesn't care that it doesn't have like level 4s or anything like that. It kind of wants to go more Rookie Rush / Mega Zoo. But there's going to be some decks that really do need to level climb in order to dig into their deck and get to the cards they need. It's not a big deal, but I also don't want it. I feel like, I mean, that first hand I could have done something with it. I could do something with this hand as well. I feel like you should be able to do something with what you got. But also introducing like the side decking thing might make things a little bit extra complicated. Um, Also brings a question actually. So I understand in Yu-Gi-Oh! With side decking, there was always like staple cards. I believe it was something like Call by the Grave, Infinite Imperil, and Ash. Like the side deck always seemed to have like the same set cards that people would turn into depending what sort of game type it's going to be, whether you're going to go first or second. Actually, that's something they need to talk about. Like, what point do you say you're going to side deck? Because round one doesn't matter. Round two, the loser gets to choose whether first or second. Do you get to say that after or before you side deck? Actually, would it even matter? I mean, if you want to make your deck to go second, you're going to put in the cards to work for going second. So that might be something to consider. Because say like I won against you, and you first say you want to go second, we then side deck. I would know that I will probably want to change up my strategy a little for a going second deck. So I'll change some cards around to be a bit more, I guess, defensive if you're going to be more of a chance of attacking my security, especially if time comes to a bit clutch, because the last 10 minutes people get a bit more rushy. So I'm going to be like, I'm going to put some more recovery options in there and put some more security control, and so see what I mean? Whereas if we side decked and then you declared if you could be going first or second, I think that would be a bit more fair. So I think that needs some clarification actually, and hopefully that does. But yeah, going back to what I mean by staple cards. So I guess it depends what sort of deck you got, but what if you sort of like teched in some like different removal options? So I've got some examples. So let's say for example, going by my Mastermon deck or any just deck, I would tech in a red and two Gaia Force for just more deletion effects, as one option. Or if my Mastermon deck is playing against Machine Dramon, the almighty immortal Machine Dramon, I would probably tech in some blue cards, Kaiser's Breath for example, because it bounces. Probably not the best choice, but it's closest to hand. Or if I'm playing a completely different deck, or let's say I didn't have it, I could tech in some like yellow options because DP reduction. So basically, they all kind of do the same thing, but they're different methods of removal, if that makes sense. So would cards like these, for example, would get teched into everyone's side deck. So, like I said, if I was playing against Machine Dramon, well, I'll probably want to take these out because they're completely useless and put the more of these in, for example. I guess it all difference. And I guess for like the last card, I don't think I got it in this deck actually, but anything to do with Digivolving. Did I want an extra copy, or did I want to tech something like that in case it goes into security? Because my opponent is going first and I'm going second, so I'm going to try and recover more to hopefully get those security effect cards. You see what I mean about probably declaring first or second beforehand? So yeah, I'm wondering if there's going to be like certain cards teched into everyone's side deck, or are they just going to use cards that are customized to their deck that would change up strategy or something like that? It's just sort of like an extra thought. But side decking, I'm more inclined to have it in the main game if possible, but there needs to be some sort of further ruling into it. Definitely about whether your opponent decides to go first or second before or after side decking. I'm pretty sure it didn't say in the document. I'm just going to have a quick look again, but I don't see anything off the bat. It just says between rounds, between 3 minutes. But also, I think side decking needs to be a bit more controlled as well, but a bit more monitored at least. I personally would take a stopwatch with me. Not because of my opponent, well, yeah, because of my opponent, but also to show that I'm sticking to time. And like, I'll say, yeah, I'm done basically. So yeah, that's my view on it. Hope to see you guys at Digifest. If you don't, then better luck next time. But yeah, thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you like this interaction. Actually, I'm still very new to this sort of thing, so anyways, see you again, guys. Take care. Bye.